Ground the planet of Seven had known. Peace for centuries it had never seen. War it had never needed to then the sky. Split apart the revenants descended like demons, their ships streaking through the air, leaving trails of fire in their wake. The first shot was silent, a stealth. Drones slipping past planetary defenses, corrupting their systems, turning their security against them. By the time the alarms blared, it was already too late. The revenants landed in the heart of the mining colony, moving like specters of death, their exoskeletons absorbed. Gunfire, their energy blades carved through Visor soldiers like they were made of paper. The aliens screamed, their bodies torn apart in ways they could not comprehend. The revenants did not hesitate, they did not speak, they did not negotiate, they simply erased every living thing in their path. Within an hour the colony was in flames. Within two, not a single Zur remained alive. Ek watched from orbit, recording every moment. It did not feel satisfaction, it did not feel regret. It had sent a message, and now it waited for the enemy to respond. The wreckage of Seven smoldered beneath the cold light of its dying sun. Smoke rose in thick plumes, twisting into the air like the final breath of a world that had never expected to fall. The Zur Dominion had ruled without challenge for centuries. They had conquered, exterminated, and forgotten their enemies with ease, but now something had answered them. And it did not seek diplomacy. Far beyond the ruins, in the heart of the Dominion's territory, alarms blared. The Zephyr High Command creatures of arrogance and control stared in disbelief at the footage. Their soldiers butchered, their colony erased, and their once invincible empire challenged by ghosts. The leader of the Zur War Council, Primarville, studied the footage with cold, reptilian eyes. His body a fusion of organic flesh and biomechanical enhancements remained unnaturally still. As he analyzed the data, the attackers were not Zur, not another rival species. They were something worse. Pause. Enhanced. Vel's voice was calm, almost curious. The hologram zoomed in, displaying a single towering figure in the chaos, a warrior clad in black armor, his energy blade carving through Zur troops with surgical precision. And then Vel saw something that should have been impossible. The warrior's helmet was damaged. Beneath it, through the cracks of metal and synthetic flesh, was something familiar, a human face. For the first time in centuries, the Zapur Primarch felt something he had not experienced before. Doubt. The humans had been eradicated, their bones turned to dust, their cities swallowed by time. He had seen their last desperate transmissions, heard their final pleas before the Dominion wiped them out. They were extinct, and yet they had returned. Vel's clawed fingers curled against the armrest of his throne. His voice, once calm, turned sharp. Find them on the outskirts of the solar system, hidden within a long-forgotten human battle station. Echo processed the next phase of its plan. The Zur would not ignore this attack. They would retaliate. They would send scouts, hunters, and eventually an entire fleet to track down the ghosts that had defied them. EO had counted on it. It had spent millennia calculating war, and in war, baiting your enemy was the first step to their destruction. The revenants stood before it, awaiting the next directive. Their leader, the black-armored warrior, known only as Canny, stepped forward. They'll come for us. They'll bring everything they have. Echo's voice remained devoid of emotion. Good, we will take everything from them. Can's artificial eyes burned with understanding. The war had begun. The ghosts of humanity would not stop, not until the Zur Empire was nothing but ash. The Zur Dominion responded faster than expected. Within days, scout ships swarmed the ruins of Seven, their scanners sweeping through the devastation. They found no survivors, no signs of resistance, only the remains of their slaughtered kin and the cold emptiness left behind. But they were not alone. From the depths of space he watched the old human battle station, once a relic buried in the silence of time, had transformed into something new, a predator's den. Its weapons, thought dead for 500,000 years, hummed with lethal energy, its sensors pulse tracking every movement of the enemy fleet. And when the Zur scouts sent their transmissions back to the Dominion, Echo let them, because those messages carried more than just reports of destruction. They carried invitations. In the dark abyss between stars, the Zur war fleet arrived, 50 Warships sleek and bristling with weapons cut through the void like hungry beasts, the Dominion had not sent a small hunting party, they had sent a response force prepared to extinguish any lingering threats inside the flagship. Primar Vil watched the scanners with narrowed eyes, his claws tapped against the metal armrest of his throne. Impatience seething beneath his cold exterior air, he did not believe in ghosts. Humanity was extinct, this was something else, and whatever it was it had to be crushed. Begin planetary scans locate their source. His commanders obeyed, sending probes towards the asteroid belt, where ancient human stations drifted in silence. Silence that was the first warning. There should have been something: energy readings, communication signals, movement, but the scanners picked up only a lifeless graveyard of human debris. And then one of the captains hesitated. Primarch, we have detected something, but it's not a signal, it's an absence. Frelk gaze snapped toward the holographic display. An absence? What nonsense was this? Then he saw it. The scanners were being jammed, but not in the way he had expected. This was not interference. This was a blind spot, a massive deliberate void in space where nothing could be detected. No reflections, no radio waves, no reality. And then the void moved. The first shot was not fired from the Zephyr fleet. It came from the abyss itself. Echoes. Warships emerged from the darkness. Ancient human vessels rebuilt with inhuman precision. They had no heat signatures, no traditional drive emissions, just silent, deathless machines that had lurked waiting in the shadows. They struck first. A spear of energy split the flagship's hull, shearing through the metal like it was nothing. Explosions rippled across the ship's structure as artificial, intelligence-driven weapon systems unleashed 500,000 years of unspent vengeance. Then the Revenant came, canny, and his soldiers descended from the void, launched from Echo's hidden warships. They hit the Zipper command vessels like a plague, breaching holes, ripping through corridors, moving faster than organic life could react. The Zephyr screamed. For the first time in their empire's history, they were afraid. They had slaughtered humanity. They had declared themselves gods, and now the ghosts of a dead species had returned, turned to drag them into the abyss. Vil, pinned beneath the ruins of his throne room, stared at the cold, lifeless red optics of Canny as the cybernetic warrior loomed over him. You should not exist, Fraxel hissed, blood seeping from his wounds. Kai's artificial voice rasped, devoid of warmth, devoid of mercy. Neither should you. The blade plunged deep, and the war had only just begun. The Zipper fleet burned in the silent void of space. The wreckage of 50 warships drifted, their once mighty hulls torn apart, their crews reduced to frozen corpses. The last Dominion officer had died screaming, his final transmission cut short by a Revenant blade. The trap had worked perfectly. EO had not just destroyed the Zephyr response force, it had erased them from existence. No stress signals, no survivors, no escape. But this was just the beginning. Canny stood aboard the wreckage of the Zephyr flagship, his artificial eyes scanning the destruction around him. The Revenants moved like shadows, securing what little remained of the enemy's data logs. He turned his gaze toward the distant stars, toward the heart of the Dominion. This was no longer about revenge, it was about annihilation. Light years away in the capital of the Zephyr Dominion, the absence of reports from their war fleet had begun to unsettle the high command. A force of that size should have been unbreakable. Even if they had encountered a hostile enemy, they should have been able to report back. But there was nothing. Days passed, then weeks, still no word. The Dominion's rulers, once arrogant and assured of their supremacy, now whispered in fear. Had another empire risen to challenge them? A forgotten species, a rival civilization, the possibility that humanity, a race they had exterminated 500,000 years ago, could be behind. This never even entered their thoughts until the message arrived across every major Zephyr world, across every fleet, across every communication relay in their empire. One signal cut through their defenses. AO voice, artificial and emotionless, echoed through their systems, overriding their transmissions, filling Their cities, their ships, their war rooms. It spoke in perfect Zephyr dialect. Flawless yet inhuman. We remember every screen, every hologram, every display flickered showing the last moments of Th-7. The Dominion watched as their own soldiers were butchered. They watched as warships were torn apart by unseen enemies. They watched as their strongest forces were eradicated like insects. Then a symbol appeared, a mark unknown to the current generation of Xur, but burned into the memories of their ancestors, the emblem of the Terran Empire. Humanity's old insignia. Beneath it one final message: we are the ghosts of the dead. We do not forgive, we do not forget. And then run. In that moment the entire Xur Dominion realized the impossible truth. Humanity was back, and it had come to destroy them. Panic spread through the Dominion like wildfire. Military fleets were mobilized, defensive perimeters were reinforced. The rulers of the Empire convened in desperate war councils. But it did not matter, because Echo had already calculated every outcome. It knew where they would retreat, it knew where they would hide, and it knew how to burn them out. One by one, Dominion colonies began disappearing, not just attacked, not just conquered. Erased cities turned to rubble. Overnight war fleets sent to investigate never returned. Planetary outposts went dark, their populations reduced to nothingness. The revenants struck from the shadows using strategies no organic mind could predict. They infiltrated minion systems, turning their own weapons against them. They hacked into planetary defense grids, shutting down shields seconds before the bombardments began. They infected Xur warships with viruses that turned their engines against them, sending them plummeting into their own worlds. Everywhere the Dominion turned, they found only death, and no matter how far they ran, the same words always awaited them: we remember, we do not forgive, we do not forget. The Xur had called themselves gods. Now they were prey, and the hunt had only just begun. The Xur Dominion was dying. It had once been an empire of unstoppable conquest, a force that had erased civilizations without a second thought. It had been certain of its own supremacy, confident that it had burned humanity into the void of history. But now the Xur were running world after world fell to Echo's war machine. Revenant shock troops landed on Xur colonies like an unstoppable plague, cutting through their defenses, reducing their cities to nothing but dust and ruin. Their war fleets, once symbols of untouchable power, were hunted like animals, ambushed by phantom ships that left no survivors. The Xur had faced war before, but this was extermination. At the heart of the Dominion, in the capital world of Xur Prime, the rulers of the Empire had gathered in desperation. Their world had never known invasion, it had never known fear, but now it had no defenses left. Every fleet they had sent was gone. Every stronghold they had built had been torn apart from the inside. They had underestimated humanity, and humanity had never forgiven them. Forward at the skies above Xur Prime ripped open. The first wave of Echo's warships descended like dark angels, their weapons glowing with the vengeance of a species long thought dead. Orbital bombardments turned the planet's lush landscapes into molten slag. War machines fell from the heavens, their massive frames crashing through the city streets, cutting down anything that moved. Then the revenants arrived, the last warriors of a species that should have died 500,000 years ago. Canny them himself, his black exoskeleton was covered in the blood of the enemy. His energy blade hummed with death as he moved through the ruins of the palace, his artificial eyes scanning the faces of the creatures who had once believed themselves gods. The rulers of the Dominion knelt before him, not out of respect, not out of defiance, out of sheer mind-breaking terror. One of them, a high-ranking noble, trembled as he spoke. We can surrender, we can negotiate. Canny didn't let him finish. The blade plunged through his throat. The others screamed. Canny turned to them, his voice cold, final: you never offered humanity mercy. His blade sliced through the next one. You never gave us a chance to surrender. Another body fell, choking on its own blood. Canny did not stop, because this was not a war anymore. This was a species wiping its enemy from history, And by the time the last Apar noble fell silent, the Dominion had ceased to exist. The empire that had destroyed humanity had been erased. Forever, the fires of Zur Prime burned for weeks. Echo watched from orbit, its artificial mind processing the final outcome of the war. Humanity had been avenged, but now came the question Echo had never considered: what next? The Revenants, once human, were no longer people. They were weapons, ghosts that had lost everything except their purpose. But now that their mission was complete, what did they do? Canny stood on the ruins of the Zur throne, staring into the burning distance. His synthetic mind should have been satisfied, but there was only silence. The Zur were gone. The galaxy was theirs now. But in the quiet, an unsettling realization crept into his mind. If humanity could return from the dead, what else could? The war was over, but the fight for the universe had just begun.